Peter, you might be the first person on this planet that has ever shut me up for this long. Good old Heraclitus, I tell you, that wild and crazy guy.
If I came to you and I gave you $10,000 for 20% of the company.
Deal.
Yeah.
So, is that a verbal?
Younger than us, sorry to say, Joseph.
What, younger than 20?
Joe, we're just trying to help you because clearly you've lost control of the conversation.
I never, you know what? With all due respect, I never had control of the situation. Doesn't mean I'm overgone. What doesn't kill me makes you stronger.
Look at you! You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're insane. You're insane.
Din 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 get your freak on, okay, we will stop right there. But today we are going to learn. I'm excited about it. I am with my own kind, with my people behind me, about unleashing our inner freak, being able to recognize the power of our own weaknesses that actually can be turned into strengths. And maybe they're not turned into strengths. Maybe they are already strengths. It's what makes us us. It's what makes you you. It's what makes us unique. That's what today's show is going to be about. But let's talk about another freak right now. Let's talk about the fact that it is Weary Willy Day. Weary Willy Day. What is Weary Willy Day? Whom was Weary Willy? Let me tell you. Weary Willy Day recognizes the art of clowning and the impact it has on our lives. It was named for the character made famous by Emmett Kelly, who was born on this day in 1898. Now, Kelly developed Weary Willy at a time when the goofy clown was the norm, and selling the idea for a sad, down-on-his-luck clown did not fit the formula most circuses were looking for. Times and attitudes changed when the country was in the depths of the Great Depression, kind of seems, similar to recent times. Downtrodden and world-weary was the face of the nation. People for the first time could identify with Weary Willy like never before. So Weary Willy, his frowning, whisker-shadowed face, and his dirty, torn, and worn costume went on to become an American icon. What an interesting story. That is the story of Weary Willy. Well, I'll tell you, someone who is not a clown and someone who absolutely does not wear a frown on his face is my guest, David Rendall. Besides being a professional speaker and author, and as I found out, a professor and pretty in pink and all of the above, he's a guy that really does understand the power of timing, of uniqueness, sometimes being ahead of your time, but also about relevance and resonance in this world that we're living in during these times. So David is our perfect hump day guest, and normally he's upside down. I don't know if he'll be hanging upside down when he does come onto the show, but if you want to see him and picture him upside down, you can just turn your laptop upside down or stand on your head. Do whatever it is that floats your boat. We are booked now, fully booked until the first week in February, would you believe? But every Friday, so just so you don't get withdrawal symptoms, you want more Corona TV, well, you'll get it, because every Friday you will see previous guests on the show. And this Friday, Chris Penn, Marcus Whitney, Scott Monty, Trisha Ben, and Jan Zlotnick. Sorry, Jan, you didn't fit in there, but you fit into my life. So do all of these people celebrating birthdays today. So happy birthday to all of my Facebook friends, Leon Trazel, Josh Kerr, Ryan Bloch, and of course on LinkedIn as well, Matt Owens, Nick Spirito, Art Carmichael, Movender Singh. Hope you guys are having a great day. So in keeping with the subject matter and in keeping with this whole idea of finding and unleashing and embracing your freak factor and being able to fly that flag, that's very alliterative, fly that flag proudly and explore, champion, celebrate those weaknesses. We're going to be talking about that today in the soliloquy. 2020 is the year of the upside down, where everything is exactly the opposite of what it seems or should be. So it's appropriate to focus on the concept of weakness today and how it actually can be a strength. That point of view is the subject matter expertise of my guest today, David Rendall. Not just any weakness that I want to talk to you about today, but my own weaknesses. In the past, I think I've been my own worst enemy at times. I thought my fierce independence and strong self-belief were strengths. But with any power or even superpower, too much of it can be a bad thing, can backfire. I think I've been difficult to work with. I probably still am. Idealism and zealotry, I think, are joined by a thin, invisible thread, and sometimes it's very easy to move from one side to the other, sometimes without even knowing it. Criticism has been a bit of an Achilles heel for me, but with it is I would say, the perfect antidote or ointment, another C word, compromise. People don't like to be told they're wrong, even if they are. So as the saying goes, pick your battles. Maybe these character traits are why I'm not a corporate guy, but I feel that's a bit of a cop-out. We all have to work with people at the end of the day. Take delivering a keynote speech, for example. I used to be so particular and difficult to work with. No, I'm not talking about I only want blue M&Ms in the green room, but things like not sharing my slides ahead of time or insisting on presenting from my laptop. That all changed, by the way, when my computer froze in front of 2,000 people in Mexico. These days, I try and tap into my weaknesses of vulnerability and honesty as a new way to do business. Not radical candor per se, but more along the lines of just telling the truth. I'm not entirely sure how it will actually end up being a strength, for the main reason that people can't really deal with fragility and weakness in general. They just don't know how to relate. So do I refrain and pull back or stay the course and push ahead? I can't say for sure, but it does strike me that a key part of this process is the word authenticity. Be true to yourself. That is all. That way, it's less about strengths, weaknesses, perceived or otherwise, but as David Rendall says, uniqueness. And that has to count for something. Well, I'm sure he has a point of view on all of this, and it's time to bring him on. But first, a little bit of background about David. During the last 15 years, David Rendall has spoken to audiences on every inhabited continent. How many people can say that? Prior to becoming a speaker, he was a leadership professor and stand-up comedian. He also managed nonprofit enterprises that provided employment for people with disabilities. In between presentations, David competes in ultramarathons and Ironman triathlons. David has a Doctor of Management degree in organizational leadership, as well as a graduate degree in psychology. He's the author of 4 books, The 4 Factors of Effective Leadership, The Freak Factor, The Freak Factor for Kids, and finally, last but not least, Pink Goldfish. Let's welcome him onto the show. Mr. David Rendall, welcome to Corona TV.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be talking to anyone who doesn't live at my house.
That's a good line. I think I might have to use that as well. Well, I could move in, so I won't.
You're welcome to come over.
But you still get out. You still get around. I think you were telling me about a rather unusual presentation that you just gave at 1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, I'm getting out through the interwebs. I'm getting all sorts of amazing opportunities that I wish I could have fulfilled in person. I've been speaking in Oman and Malaysia and all over the world just from the comfort of my own home, or the discomfort of my own home, depending on how you look at it.
And I see, like, when you're doing a show like this, you're standing up as opposed to sitting down. I sit down because otherwise the seated soliloquy would be called the standing soliloquy, and it just doesn't roll off the tongue. How do you feel when you're giving a presentation? Is it important, even in this virtual environment, to stand up versus sit down?
It is for me. It's important to mimic the traditional setting as much as possible. There's something about the way my mind and my body communicate that's used to being standing up and those kinds of things. And I find that it's a little more stilted, a little less energy. And so I even do it for things like this where it isn't a presentation, but I just think I'm more natural. I'm more comfortable. I think you get a little better air and breathe a little better as well. But I just think I've trained myself over the years to be up and moving while I'm communicating. I'm also just more comfortable that way anyway, hyperactive, as we'll get to probably at some point. And so being up is better for me than being seated. Yeah.
Yeah, and that word hyperactive, we can put a pin in it for now because it's a word that carries so much weight and a misunderstanding, right? A kid that might have been called hyperactive 20 years ago today is diagnosed as ADD or ADHD, is put on medication, when in actual fact, I'm pretty sure you would tell me that it might actually not be the weakness, certainly from 20 years ago, that we all thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's the point of the freak factor, that these things that we look at as weaknesses, even diagnosable disabilities, are also strengths, and that we oftentimes miss that because we're so busy looking at what's wrong that we miss what's right. And so we try to fix these people who aren't broken in the first place, and we actually end up damaging them instead of fixing them because we take away the value of that strength by focusing so much on the weakness and by trying to fix it, by trying to repair it. The person with ADD doesn't need to sit still. They need to find opportunities to move. They don't need to focus. They need opportunities to explore a wide variety of interests. So it's not about fixing it, but if we believe it's broken, then we need to fix it. And so that's the first part that needs to change, is being able to see weaknesses in a new light and be able to see the strength that comes with those weaknesses. Yeah.
I think that word also, broken, is such an important word because it's subjective as well. You know, who says it's broken? Who defines what is broken? And it just sounds to me to be incredibly arrogant to take it amongst ourselves to fix something that is so gloriously different and unique. And I think that's obviously a lot of the things you talk about.
Well, and I think you really hit something immediately there. Who decides? So if, you know, we've all heard feedback is the breakfast of champions. And we tell people that if you want to be a leader or be successful, you need to be open to other people's feedback and input. And yet, who decides? Who, when, where? You know, I can't give you a blood test to find out if you're conceited or just really, really confident. I can't give you a blood test to find out if you're really, really organized or you've got some kind of problem. There's no scientific evaluation there. So it's up to, my boss told me I'm too analytical. My boss told me I'm too intense. My wife told me that I'm too organized. Who decides? Who decides where that line is, and who decides when we should take that criticism on board and try to do something about it? Or we just say, hey, everyone's going to have a different perspective on just about any possible characteristic. And I could probably find other people who feel like maybe I don't even have enough of that characteristic. I always joke, if someone tells you you're too organized, join the National Association of Professional Organizers and find out where you really stand. You know, and when you end up in that situation, you're probably going to be around a bunch of people who are challenging you to be even more organized than you already are, instead of asking you to dial it back. And I think that really goes to your point. Who decides? And I think sooner or later we have to decide and stop letting, I think we give way too much credit to what the people around us can tell us about ourselves. And that should overrule oftentimes what we believe to be true or know to be true. And I think that's dangerous and it's unhelpful.
I always summarize every episode of the show, and I call it a Corona Bite, B-Y-T-E. It's a 1 minute highlight. I've already decided that the Corona Bite, I don't think I've ever known what it was definitively 14 minutes and 53 seconds into a show. And I even know what it's going to be called. It's going to be called Who Decides, which I think is a beautiful insight. But before we continue, I am being already criticized by Tom Morris, who's saying, say it's Southern Joe. I've been criticized by Tom Morris, who says it's Dave Rendall. Is that right?
He's close on the end. I mean, if it's Southern, it's Rendall, right? Because they say their E's like I's down here. So it's Dave Rendall. So you don't put any sound between the D's and the L's.
There's no Rendell.
Rendall. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tom was as wrong as I was. Dave Rendall. Okay, I got it.
Well, no, in the South they say pen like peon and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, he wants you to hit the Southern, but yeah, everybody says it wrong. Randall, Rendell, Reynolds. Sometimes I get Reynolds. Every keynote is a new opportunity for someone to say it.
Well, I get called Jeff all the time, so go figure. Angus Nelson is here, and he said he's ready to get his freak on. Robert Collins said Dave Rendall. Am I getting it better now, or am I still
Rendall nailed it?
Rendall. Yep. Stand on, be unique, don't be a commodity, especially to yourself. Wanda is here. She's saying hello, and I'm saying hello back to her as well. And a few people commenting on standing, right? Wendy says standing helps with natural body expression. Robert says standing delivers the energy and passion. So,
well, look at his profile photo. Obviously, he's into it, right? Like he's got to be standing up to deliver that one, right? That's the way to go there.
I think that might be like, is that I was going to say Jeff Bridges. It's not Jeff Bridges. Who is the guy that was in the newsroom? Was it Jeff Bridges? Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels, yeah.
Yeah, Robert's looking very much like Jeff Daniels, I would say. And Haiti likes that as well. Who decides? I mean, who decides is almost like a tattoo, right? It's like a mantra. There you go. Have you got who decides tattooed on your body?
It's got to be next. I think that's the way to go. Maybe.
I love that. If you ever put who decides on your body, that would probably make my entire life. By the way, Robert says, here is the box. You need to fit in this box. You're not broken. You're amazing in your way. Find that path that fits you. I mean, this is definitely something that resonates with so many people. It's such a strong point of view. And that's why I was so thrilled for you to come onto the show. We'll get into some of the freakish factors about you, because you are quite freakish too in your own. I mean, ultra marathons and triathlons. Have you done, by the way, extreme marathons? Have you done that yet?
What's an extreme marathon? What do you mean?
Well, an extreme marathon, it's a marathon, but it's like rocks and, wading through rivers. And there's, I think there's the Mont Blanc one, which is like,
ultra marathons. So yeah, I do. I started with marathons, and then this year I did my first 100-mile race. And then I did another 100-mile race. And then I did 7 marathons in 7 days, and then added a few extra miles to hit 200. And I did a 24-hour race, and Saturday I'll do a 12-hour race. So yeah, I haven't done it. I mean, I haven't done anything as extreme as the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc. I mean, that's kind of the Super Bowl of ultra marathons, and through the mountains in France and Italy and places like that. But yeah, that's the goal at some point, is to get to the point to be strong enough and skilled enough. I mean, that really ends up being skill at some point. You're at elevation and you're on very difficult, what they call technical terrain. And so that's a different level than what I'm at right now, but I'm on the path slowly but surely.
So my only follow-up question is, do you do that also completely upside down and on your head, or?
The strength is in my legs, not my arms. So that definitely have to do that one, the conventional. We got to stick it conventional, but I'm not the conventional runner. I'm 6'6", which is not the normal height for a long distance runner. So I definitely stand out even when I'm doing those kinds of things. I'm kind of the wounded giraffe of the race. I'm easy to find and standing out in the crowd.
And of course, because you're wearing pink all the time. But I found out some interesting facts about you. It's probably a good time to talk about them, because the athlete in you, you're not just the academic professor. You're also an accomplished athlete, and one of the things I found out about you is this was the best rendition that I could find or put together with my limited budget of how. This is on top of you, right? In 1993, you were elbowed in the head by a Russian Olympic basketball player during a game in Ukraine. I was rushed to the hospital where they shaved my head and stitched it with. My next question is, what the hell were you doing in a basketball game playing the Russians? Who were you playing for?
I played basketball at a little tiny school called Judson College in Elgin, Illinois. Probably had about 400 students at the time. Small private religious college that was about 80 miles from my house growing up, and small enough to accept me to play basketball because I was good at basketball, but I was very, very thin. So when I graduated high school, I was 6'4", 145. So I wasn't exactly beefy enough to play Division I basketball. So it's the lowest level of not even NCAA basketball. But we took a trip to Ukraine in 1993, which was just very shortly, after, the USSR broke into its constituent parts. And we just played different teams. We met up with a girls volleyball team doing something similar at some point, and we would play different games and matches in the same place, in some of the same cities. And it was the first game, and I was jumping up, and he was coming down. And again, I'm 6'6", so if you're coming down with your elbow on top of my head, obviously you're a big person. And he just split me wide open. And the best part was the way they wrapped me up, because as you can imagine, in 1993 in Ukraine, their medicine wasn't at the same level that we would expect in America. So they stitched me up. They gave me 3 stitches for a cut that was probably that long. It probably would have been 50 stitches in America. And I still have a mountain range down the middle of my head from it. And then the best part was they just took a piece of gauze and then they wrapped it around my chin. So you've seen those pictures like World War I refugees kind of looking sad and huddled, and they have those wraps on their head. That's exactly what I looked. I mean, they just went straight around, just wrapped it around my face, and I walked around like that for a couple of days.
I would say like Weary Willie. I think Weary Willie must have worn a bandage around his head at some point. And it's funny. It's funny because, look, you're definitely inspiring people that are watching today. Bob says you're making me feel guilty for only doing one sit-up this morning. But then he said, maybe I'll do another one this afternoon. So you're inspiring. Output. Unfortunately, Heidi is going backwards because she was committing to the tattoo, right? And then she kind of regressed and has decided she'll just rather, buy the T-shirt.
Well, I get more money when she gets the T-shirt than I do if she gets the tattoo. So I think that's my preference if we're being selfish.
Exactly. And by the way, if you and he really does get money because he sells merch. He sells freak merch. You can get your freak merch on at David Rendall.store, which is awesome because it's beautifully branded, of course, this whole idea of freak factor. I mean, it just rolls off the tongue. So let's get into the subject matter for a moment. But before we do that, there are 2 just final pieces of embarrassment that I have to call out, which is because you're an athlete, you're an Adonis. There's no question. You tower above us all. You can deliver a keynote standing up or on your head. We get all of that. But then you have this thing that I can't even pronounce, which is bilateral Gesundheit, what you call midget digits on both of your thumbs. So what the hell is that?
Well, first, I want to make it very clear that we're not using midget in the inappropriate way. Brachydactyly actually means the literal translation is midget digits. So we're not talking poorly about little people. So it just means that your digits, whatever they happen to be, for me, it's both thumbs. That's the bilateral part, are smaller than they would otherwise be. So I'm 6'6". I should have these gigantic hands and these gigantic thumbs. Look up, Michael Jordan was 6'6". And instead, I have these 2 thumbs that basically look like big toes. I mean, if you were here in person, but you can kind of see it. It's the same thickness at the bottom as it is at the top, and it just looks like a big toe. And I had no idea until I was watching a television show where they were able to catch this person based on the fact that they had this brachydactyly. And then my middle daughter has it as well. So we both have thumbs that look like big toes, and they're in the sense that they're kind of chubby, but also that they're very short. And that's the brachydactyly, that they're smaller than they would otherwise be. They're not those long fingers that you'd expect.
You can actually answer the age-old question, would you rather have feet for hands or hands for feet?
Got them. And didn't even know it. Just thought everybody was like that. And it turns out they're not.
So your answer is just yes.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Why not? All right. So let's get into the subject matter as well. The freak factor. An amazing, amazing concept. I would love for you to set up the book, set up the thesis. This is your life's work. And then, I will jump back in, and I'm sure many people will comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple on its face. I mean, I was always in trouble in school and at home, and then eventually at work because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. So those were all of my weaknesses. Dave, my parents, Dave, you need to sit still and be quiet and do what you're told. At school, Dave, you need to sit still and be quiet and do what you're told. Dave, and here was the underlying message, explicit and implicit. You're never going to amount to anything if you can't learn to sit still, be quiet, and do what you're told. And that's the framework that most of us bring to self-improvement. In fact, almost every self-improvement book is, you probably have this wrong with you, or, hey, let me show you how you're doing this wrong or not doing this right or failing in this way. And then let me show you how to fix it. And so for me, it was sitting still, being quiet, and doing what I was told. And everyone told me that I had to fix those if I was going to be successful. And I wasn't one of those people who was like, I'm going to show you, I'll do it my way. I figured they were right. It was kind of just demoralizing. Like, well, I guess, it sucks that I'm going to be a failure, but I don't really know what to do. And I'm trying to do it your way. It's not working, So I figured they were right. And then I got surprised. I became an adult. I stumbled into professional speaking, didn't even know it was a thing. And now I get paid to stand up, not to sit down. I get paid to talk, not to be quiet. And I get paid to run my own business, not to do what other people tell me to do. And so I remember I was sitting in a car wash, listening to a book about focusing on your strengths instead of your weaknesses. And I thought, wait a second, what if the weakness, what looks like the weakness is the strength? What if the worst thing about you is the best thing about you? And it was just that one question that ultimately became everything that we're going to talk about today. It became the book, it became the assessment, because I discovered that definitely my weaknesses were strengths, and it was more than just your biggest weakness and your biggest strength. It could be a whole series of characteristics. And then I started finding these amazing examples of people all over the world. I mean, dyslexic billionaires. And there's a guy that I got to speak with who has no arms, and he's the best archer in the entire world because he doesn't have arms and because he uses his legs instead, and that gives him an advantage. So I started finding these amazing examples of how weakness was strength, and just got more and more passionate about it, and got more and more amazing feedback from people when I shared it. So I built the assessment because people would always say, what's good about this bad thing about me? And, started speaking on it. And pretty soon it was the only thing I was speaking on. People, I think, want me to speak, and I'm funny and some other things, but I think people ultimately want that message. You need to hear that your kids' weaknesses might be strengths. You need to hear that your employees' weaknesses might be strengths. You need to hear that your students' weaknesses might be strengths. And so I just keep getting to speak to these audiences where people hear it and then they tell somebody else, which, as you know, in marketing is the best kind, word of mouth marketing. You need to hear this freak factor idea. And so it wasn't some kind of, definitely not marketing genius. I never even took a marketing class. It was my life. And I discovered a truth that changed my life, and I started sharing it, and it turned out that it resonated with a lot of other people as well. And I've just been, talking to as many people as I can about it for about the last 15 years.
Well, first of all, damn you, because you might have now birthed the second Corona bite, which is the quote, "It was my life." It wasn't. Yeah. I mean, but again, there's this idea to one's, to thine own self be true. Which is being able to embrace the flaws, the warts, the midget digits, whatever the case may be. But there's something else that you said that I was just taking feverish notes myself, and I know Tom Morris is taking notes as well. And I wrote down, get paid to do the things that you suck at, or that people tell you suck. Get paid. Find a career that matches your weaknesses as opposed to your strengths. I think the way that you told your story is quite sublime. You spoke too much. You never shut up for a moment. Guess what? What would happen if you could get paid to talk, and paid to talk a lot? And it's the exact opposite of how we think about career counseling. The opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the step. I have a framework in the Freak Factor, and one of the steps is amplification. Turn up the volume on that thing that everyone's telling you to turn the volume down on. And I used Jimmy Kimmel as an example. He had a 10th grade history teacher who told him, you'll never amount to anything unless you stop screwing around. And then he went pro at screwing around. He went full time at screwing around. He became more childish, more silly, more ridiculous, more immature. Now he's a talk show host, has his own television show. He's hosted the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's one of the highest paid comedians in the world because he turned up the volume. He amplified the very characteristic that an adult in his life told him definitively, you'll never amount to anything. I always say that was rough. My parents gave me hope and said, you'll never amount to much, right? But he told me, you'll never amount to anything unless you stop screwing around. And then that's what he went pro in. They called me hyperactive, and now I do ultra marathons, and I get praised and rewarded for the very characteristics I used to be criticized and punished for, not because I turned the volume down. We love to talk about moderation and reduce it and dial it back and find just the right amount, kind of the Goldilocks kind of thing. And that's not when it happens, I don't think. It's when you turn the volume up on the very thing that other people are so convinced you have to be reducing or moderating. That's where success usually lives. And most of the time we don't find that success because we reduce it to the point that we become invisible. We moderate it to the point that we become like everybody else, and we lose that corresponding strength as we fix that weakness. And I tried, my undergraduate degree is in psychology. My master's degree is in counseling psychology. And for those who don't know what you might do to get a counseling degree, counseling is fundamentally about sitting and listening to people. It's not about giving advice. It's not about telling them what to do. It's certainly not about getting speeches. And so we'd have activities where for 30 minutes, you were supposed to pick a partner in your class and you were supposed to let them talk to you, and you were not supposed to talk for the entire time. You couldn't say anything more than, or ask some sort of clarifying question. So for someone to say, well, Dave, I bet if you worked at it, because this is what we believe, I bet if you worked at it, Dave, you could have fixed those things. I have 6 years of higher education in how to sit and be quiet and listen attentively. And I never used that. I have 0 training on how to be a professional speaker, and I've been making a living at it for 15 years. Speaking is who I am. Listening, even with a tremendous amount of effort and education, is just simply not. Being still is just not. So that's one of the lies we've all been told. If you want it bad enough and you try hard enough, you can be whatever you want to be. And it's simply not true. And I know because I've tried. It wasn't like, oh, Dave, you're just lazy or you took the easy route. No, I went through. I learned the things. I studied the things. I know the things. I can't do those things. And yet there's other things that I can do without even trying. There's a quote that I love from Pavarotti, the great opera singer. And he said, people always praise me for my discipline. And I tell them it's not discipline, it's devotion. When you find that thing you love to do, you want to do, you can't keep from doing, it looks like discipline to everybody else. But it's not. Like people are joking about not wanting to do a sit-up and that kind of stuff. I don't run because I'm supposed to. I don't run because it's good for me. I run because I want to run. I want to be outside. I want to be moving. I want to be taking on those challenges. I feel badly when I can't run. So I don't think I'm better than people who don't run, who don't exercise as much, who don't want to do ultra marathons. That's not it at all. I'm actually worse in the ways that I can't sit still. I can't sit around. I can't just enjoy watching Netflix all day. Pretty soon I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to accomplish? Where am I going to go? I want to be outside. So we misunderstand that about people, what they can accomplish with discipline, and that discipline is even required to be successful. And it isn't if you find that right fit, if you find alignment is what I call it, where you find that right match between who you are and where you are.
You said something that I think probably, and we're going to segue into what I think is one of the most interesting parts of your work, which is kids. But you said if you want it badly enough and you work hard enough at it, you will succeed. And you said that is not true. So complete that sentence for me. If that is not true, then what is true?
What's true is that success happens when you find the right fit between who you are and where you are, between the person and the place. When you find that alignment where, to your point from earlier, it's not that the weakness becomes a strength or that you turn the weakness into a strength. In the right situation, the weakness is the strength. When I'm in school and I want to move and I want to talk and I want to be in charge, all of those characteristics look like weaknesses because I'm in the wrong place. I'm in a place that wants sitting still, being quiet, doing what you're told. When I run my own business as a keynote speaker and I want to stand up and I want to talk and I want to be in charge, that's the job, right? That's the job. No one's ever complained because that's the job. So one of my favorite examples, and this kind of segues into the kids, there's a guy named Thorkild Son, and he had a son with autism. He noticed that the therapy for autism was focused on getting his son to stop hyper-focusing and stop doing the same thing over and over again. Those are two of the classic characteristics of autism: hyper-focus, repetitive behaviors. Thorkild Son goes to work. He works in software testing. He sees that, wait a second, in software testing, we need employees who can hyper-focus and do the same thing over and over again. And typical people actually aren't very good at hyper-focusing and doing the same thing repetitively over and over again. He builds a company for his son. So forget finding the right fit. He creates the right fit. He builds a software testing company, hires his son and 50 other people with autism. They've been so successful that the SAP, the global software giant, is currently looking for hundreds of people with autism to do software testing for them. So he didn't say, and this is what most therapies are based on, if I work hard enough with my son, I can get him to stop hyper-focusing and get him to stop doing the same thing over and over again. And if I put the right rewards in place, and I know this stuff from psychology, and I put the right punishments in place and the right incentives in place, and I follow up consistently, I can train my son. And what's sad about this is we're now talking about the same way you would treat a seal at SeaWorld or an animal you're trying to teach. If I train them, I can stop him from doing these weird autistic behaviors that are inappropriate, and they're only inappropriate because they're abnormal. It's not what normal people do, so we need to fix this. And instead, he reframes the whole thing. My son can hyper-focus. My son can do repetitive behaviors. Where would that be a strength? And so his son and others have had massive success, not because anybody fixed them or changed them or forced them to try to fight through who they were to be something better, and certainly not to make them normal. He discovered they were abnormal in all the right ways when they found the right spot. So that's really what getting better is all about. It's simply about finding that fit, that match between who you are and where you are. And sometimes that's not easy to do, but it's a better question to ask than how do I fit in, which is what most of our self-improvement is based on: getting your kid to fit into school, getting yourself to fit in your career, getting your employee to fit into a job that maybe doesn't match them. That's where all the fighting happens. And so most of it doesn't have to be an effort when you're in the right spot, when you find the right spot. There was no point today where I was like, oh, I got to do this thing with that guy and he's going to ask me questions and I'd rather be doing fill in the blank. This doesn't require discipline today. In fact, if you would have canceled, I would have been like, bummer, missed a chance to do that thing I love to do, right?
Love it. Absolutely love it. And this book, The Freak Factor for Kids, I think I even swore at you, well, not to you, but at you. And I because you wrote this book in 2012, right? The Freak Factor for Kids: The Weirdest and Weakest Children Make the Best Adults. And before we get into it, you've put together some fantastic videos that I was just enthralled by. This is just a little clip from the one that you supplied for the Freak Factor for Kids, and I just wanted to show people. By the way, no one can relate more to the concept of big ears than so, I called you a freaking visionary because this book was written in 2012, and I look at where we are. Forget about 2020, forget about pandemics. I'm just talking about the vanillaization of our children. They need to be more pink. They're not. They're more bland. They're more cream. And that probably relates to the fried foods as well. Our kids are being conditioned by each other and by social media to not stand out, to fit in, to blend in. I think right now the world needs the freak factor for kids, and I would love for you to comment a little bit on that assertion that right now our kids are in danger. It's not just the parents saying you'll never amount to anything. I almost feel like that my mom might have done me a disservice by never saying that to me. She just told me I was the most good looking and the smallest ears. I wish it called my ears midget ears. But anyway, I would love for you to talk a little bit about this idea of where are we right now in terms of this problem? How big is this problem?
Well, first, let's talk about what your mom said, because I think that's the other thing about the freak factor is it isn't rose-colored glasses, even though that's what I'm wearing. It isn't pretend. It's not saying your kid is perfect and there's nothing wrong with them, right? It acknowledges both sides, right? It acknowledges realities. It acknowledges limits. I'm 6'6". I'm never going to be a jockey that rides a horse to victory in the Kentucky Derby. We need to stop telling people there's no limits. You can be whatever you want to be. None of that's true.
Right.
I wanted to be a football player in the National Football League, but I was 145 pounds when I graduated from high school. There's 8th graders bigger than that. So I think that's the other thing I'm trying to do with this is balance that. No limits, you can be whatever you want to be, which we think is encouraging. And I think it actually ends up being paralyzing, because if that's true, and then I don't become whatever I wanted to be, then I've failed. And so I think we're setting kids up for failure there. But I think, I'll take a slightly different track on that. I think you have two huge pressures on social, or two huge things happening on social media. One is massive pressure to fit in, be the same now, almost not at your own school and in your own community, but almost worldwide, right? And to follow the trends and follow the path that you see other people on. But you also have things happening where you have, for example, tremendous things happening, for example, with body positivity, where you have models breaking the mold of what it means to look good, what it means to be beautiful. You said earlier, you were teasing me, you said you're going to embarrass me about my thumbs and my experiences and things like that. And one of the things about embarrassment is you can't be embarrassed if you don't want to be. No one can embarrass you. It's a feeling that you choose to have. And the subtitle of the Freak Factor is Discovering Uniqueness by Flaunting Weakness. And flaunt means to parade without shame. It means to be unapologetic. And so I think there's a huge downside to social media, but I also think there's an upside to where you can find, first of all, from an alignment standpoint, you can find your fit when you wouldn't have been able to find it years ago. You can find your tribe. You can find people like you. I studied, when I studied counseling, I studied group therapy. And one of the ideas in group therapy was this concept of universality, that when you can see other people who are having the same struggle, fighting the same fight, experiencing the same challenge, having the same difficulty, it just settles you down and helps you just to know there's someone else. It's the power of Alcoholics Anonymous, to know that I'm not the only one who's a degenerate who can't stop drinking and can't get my drinking under control and has made all these bad decisions. It's harmed my relationships. I'm not the worst person on earth. There's other people, and that doesn't mean I should stay that way, but there's other people that struggle with this, and that feeling of connection really matters. So I think there's that huge, like you said, vanillization pressure. But I think there's also some cracks. That's where you can, on social media, you can find some cracks in the wall where you see through to, wait a second. They're telling me the only way to be successful is to go to school, get good grades, get into a good college, sacrifice everything for good test scores, go to that Ivy League university. And then here's this guy on Twitch who is gaming for a living, Here's this guy who started his own channel on YouTube as a 14-year-old. Here's this girl with some sort of deformity or disability who's become famous. I mean, one of my favorite ones is there's a female gamer on Twitch. Twitch is a platform where people can basically watch you play video games. And she has Tourette's. And she's been very successful on Twitch because of her Tourette's. She found a situation that rewards her for her weakness. So Tourette's makes you lose control oftentimes of your verbalizations, and sometimes you have tics in your body as well. And so she just shouts out these violent and aggressive swear words while she's playing video games on Twitch. And she's got a massive following of people who find it tremendously entertaining. And so I think there's those cracks that allow some light into the darkness that you're talking about. And I think that's the upside. And I think that's what I would say about any platform, internet, social media, that it enables a lot of the bad, but it also opens up the doors to some good. You and I would never have met. We wouldn't be doing this right now. And those kids wouldn't have been able to find those other weirdos, those other people who were unusual in the same way that they were. And now you can find those kids. You can be that yo-yo kid. I just watched that on We Are the Champions on Netflix. And you can be that kid who's into yo-yo in Cleveland, Ohio. And you can be connecting with that kid in Taiwan who's into yo-yo, and you can build a relationship with that person instead of saying the kids at my school think I'm stupid because I'm into yo-yo, and yo-yo is for babies and that's dumb. And so you can find that reinforcement to be yourself as well in a way that I think would have been harder to do in the past.
Well, I haven't got to that episode, but I did enjoy the cheese rolling one, which is about as freakish as you'll ever get. You know, there's another platform that strikes me as really feeding into what you just said, and that's TikTok. I've been blown away by people that have found a voice, and these are people that are oftentimes, there's a beautiful young girl whose face is severely disfigured, and she's putting makeup on, and there are people that are morbidly obese, not just children, but adults. It seems like almost TikTok is the social media freak show in the best possible way. I think I didn't know about Twitch, but I love the fact that some of these platforms are actually, breaking the mold, as you call it, the cracks that are actually, just breaking at the seams and just letting all this light shine through.
Yeah, I think the other stories are just easier to find and they're easier to see, and we hear them talked about more widely. But there's a lot of hope out there, and that's what I've discovered by being the Freak Factor guy. Is people send me those stories, I tend to see those things. It's confirmation bias, I think, in the best way, where you tend to notice the kinds of things that you're looking for. And so you can see that it works, and then you can promote it even more broadly. And again, but to your point, that's why I do what I do. That's why I want to talk. That's why I spoke to kids in Malaysia at 1 a.m. American time. To be clear, I wasn't waking them up at 1 a.m. and their parents were there. 2 p.m. in Malaysia. That's why I speak to students at schools. That's why I speak to their teachers. That's why I speak to their parents. Because I wish someone would have told me when I was a kid. I wish someone would have told my parents when I was a kid, you can be weird. Your weaknesses might be strengths. You're failing in school, but you're not a failure. This just isn't the right spot for you. There's hope. The thing that seems damaged and broken about you, there's an upside to that. And though there's a program that I think is still happening that started on the internet for kids who were gay or lesbian, that the whole theme was, it gets better. It was adults telling kids, hey, I've been there, and it seems like you're not going to make it through high school. And unfortunately, because of suicide and other things, many people don't make it through high school. And they're like, hey, but don't think that the way it is right now is the way it will be for the rest of your life, because that seems unbearable, but that's not the reality. Adult life is different than high school, than what you're experiencing right now. And so they needed somebody to be out there telling them it gets better. And that's what I'm trying to do, is telling people on a much broader range than just your sexual orientation. You've got a physical disability, of a mental disability, whatever it happens to be, telling everybody it gets better. there are, and that's what I think the internet does, and that's what I think the worldwide connections we can have do. You can connect with people like you from all over the world. You can find a spot. You can create a spot in a way that you couldn't do 30, 40 years ago. You can find a tribe, build a community around a very, very niche thing, a very, very unusual interest, a very, very small passion or devotion in a way that you never would have been able to do before.
I love that. And, you know, one of the things that you'll often hear a kid say is, you don't get it. You don't understand. But of course, there are plenty of adults that have the wisdom, that have the resilience, that have the grit, that have the battle scars. What I really love about this conversation today of all days is that lately there's been I felt this cloud developing, this gloom and doom about, the social dilemma has almost, depressed us. And you are the antidote to the social dilemma by being able to say, you know what, we've just got to look a little harder. We've got to search a little harder. We can find those communities and those connection points, and we can rebuild again. I also want to make one other point, which is the word weird is such a loaded word. You're weird. Weird just means I don't understand you, or you're different. And I think we almost have to reclaim that word. We have to turn the word weird into the most, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the compliment.
That's exactly right. And that's why I use the word freak, because if somebody calls you a clean freak, or they call you a neat freak, or they call you a control freak, they're criticizing you. But in sports, if you're an athlete and somebody calls you a freak, it means you're unusually gifted and talented. And so it's a word that means both. And that's exactly what I say in my speeches, is that what makes us weird also makes us wonderful. What makes us weak also makes us strong. And you're right. That's exactly why the point I want people to get to, which is why I wear it on my shirt. Obviously, if somebody says, Dave, you're weird, that's not going to embarrass me or hurt my feelings or cause me to question my life choices, because I put it right on my shirt, right? I know that. I'm clear about that. I understand that. And even like this goes back to who decides again. Like when you said you're weird, there was a lady at a speech one time I did in Australia, and she met me before the speech, and she was supposed to, show me around and set me up and things like that. And she said, you're too tall. Those were the first words out of her mouth. We're not like welcome to Australia or good morning. You're too tall. And again, that's a great example of who decides, because what that means is she's small and I'm big to her. But if you put me on the court with an NBA team, people will be like, who's that short, skinny white guy out there who looks like he's the ball boy? Because at 6'6", I'm one of the smallest people on an NBA court. So who decides that I'm too tall, right? Who decides that I'm too big? Who decides whatever weird is in comparison to some certain set point, which is usually determined by the person who's there, right? And so we're back to who decides. You're weird compared to what? And even with my shirt, people say, Dave, your shirt's upside down. And then I look like this. And if you can see it from my perspective, it looks absolutely right? So again, it's who decides. From your perspective, freak's upside down. From my perspective, that's the only, otherwise it would be upside down to me, and it's my shirt. It's my shirt. So one of my tattoos is upside down, because when I see it, it's right side up. And when I ride my bike and I have my arms out in front of me, it's the way I want it to be. It's not for you, right? It's not for you. It's for me. So it's not about your perspective. And I think it's not that we don't listen. It's not that we don't care. It's not that you can't learn. But I think sometimes we just give too much weight to what those other people are saying. And we worry that they're right in ways that we can't possibly understand, that we have to change everything in order to make those people happy. And that just becomes an endless game that you can never finish and never win at.
I mean, the word perspective is important. As Bob says, see it from my perspective. It is all relative, but there is something that you have, and someone might interpret it as supreme confidence, but it's the word I would use is peace. When you are at peace, when you have that identity, when you have that inner strength and self-confidence, nothing can take you down or take you out. But there's so many people that are so insecure. You are secure, but so many people are insecure. How do they counter that? Or and I'm checking myself because I'm using the word insecurity. See, I almost fell into the trap. I almost did. How can you embrace that insecurity and turn that into a strength?
Yeah, so I do think that there's two kinds of weaknesses, and what we're talking about, what we've been talking about this whole time is who you are, who you naturally are, how you were born, how you're wired. But I do think we have baggage sometimes, right? We have luggage that isn't us. We're insecure. I was insecure for a long time, even though now I seem confident because everything around me said you're going to fail. You're the worst. You have massive problems. Your way of doing things can't possibly be successful. That was external insecurity being projected onto me, and I didn't have the knowledge and the life experience to be able to combat that. So I do think that to play the game, insecurity is oftentimes what it looks like when somebody has a profound level of humility. They can oftentimes get criticized for that, right? A very humble person can oftentimes be criticized as insecure of not promoting themselves enough, not putting themselves out there enough, not being willing to share their successes enough. And that can make them seem insecure. And again, that's the thing, from other people's perspective, even though that's not what it really is. But I think that's what the whole Freak Factor is trying to do. It's trying to give people that confidence, tell them you're better than they're telling you are. You're better than you think you are. You have more strengths than you think you do. You've been focused in the wrong place, and the people around you have been getting you to focus in the wrong place. I want you to see the other side of the story. There's a quote that I use at the end that I just absolutely love. It says, "We do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals that deep inside of us something is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch." That's from E.E. Cummings. We do not believe in ourselves until somebody reveals that deep inside of us something is valuable. Maybe the thing that everybody's been telling us for our whole life is the most worthless thing about us. That it isn't worthless, that it's worth listening to, that it's worthy of our trust, that it's sacred to our touch. And so I think that's how you help with that insecurity that we've been taught to feel, that shame that people want to use to control us. That's why I use the word flaunt, to parade without shame. People can't shame you without your permission. People can't make you feel ashamed. You can decide how you want to feel about who you are and the way you've done things. You can decide to not give weight to what those other people think. And so I think that's the message for people who have had that insecurity put on them. I don't think that's a characteristic that somebody has, is to tell them, and that's what I'm trying to do with the Freak Factor. It's not the traditional self-help book. Here's what's wrong with you. I'm going to help you fix it with enough self-discipline and effort. You'll be able to get there. I believe in you. It's no, you probably don't have as much work to do as you think you do. And in fact, what I'm really telling you to do is almost the easiest possible thing. Sometimes you just need to trust yourself and be more of all those things that people are telling you to be less of. Turn up the volume, even when people tell you to turn it down. Go with your devotion. Don't worry so much about discipline. Those are actually easier lessons to hear sometimes. Just do the things that you're trying to do and that people are fighting you on, and see where that goes, and try to find a way to do that productively and adaptively.
It's so funny because, one of the things people tell you with streaming is, less is more, and video needs to be shorter. And I'm looking at the timer and I'm thinking, you know what? To hell with them. I'm going to embrace my, weirdness and say, if this show has to be longer, I can be Joe Rogan. I can be Tim Ferriss in video. Who says it has to be shorter?
So that's a great example. I did a post on my blog when I used to have one years ago, and it was the 10 unbreakable rules of blogging and why you can break them. And it was just, for everything that someone tells you is the way to do it, there's somebody else who isn't just doing it differently. They're doing so keep it short. And then you have somebody who's just writing long form, be professional. And then you have somebody cursing like a sailor and talking about having sex with their boss. And then somebody says, be personal and be vulnerable. And somebody else who you don't even know if they have family, you don't know where they live, you don't know what they're up to. They do everything sort of detached and objectively. For every sort of piece of advice, you can find somebody, again, who isn't just succeeding a little bit, but absolutely crushing it by not doing it the way that. And so I think that's, again, my constant message, is to just analyze that, find out if that's really true. Is vanilla really the only way? Are there people who want something different? And almost be skeptical, almost to not even just go, well, maybe, almost. That's one of my TEDx talks, was called oppositioning. It's that sometimes the opposite of a good thing is a good thing. Hey, they tell you really short videos what people are looking for. And you're right. Joe Rogan's a great example. How about 2.5 hours of just talking and chatting with very little direction and going all sorts of different ways. There's people who absolutely love that. They don't want the bite size. So what everybody wants is never what everybody wants. What everybody's looking for is never what everybody's looking for.
I love that. The opposite of a good thing is a good thing. And this good thing is almost, though, coming to a close. But first, Lee Durr said, are the shirts for sale? My 13-year-old giant kid wants one. The answer, and I put it up already, is yes, they are for sale. You can get your freak merch on at davidrendall.store. There are a few other things we have to do, and you have truly lived up to the billing of a show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing, because you've also created the version of the freak factor for corporations. By the way, I didn't tell you this, but I know Stan very well, and it's great. I didn't realize that you'd collaborated with him, but now it makes sense because of of where you guys live, etc. So this is fantastic. I mean, he did what was his first one? Was it the purple goldfish?
Purple goldfish, yep.
So tell us a little bit about pink goldfish.
So it's the freak factor for marketing. It's recognizing that your business's weaknesses, your product's weaknesses, your service's weaknesses might also be strengths as well. I'll give you one simple example that we're going to add to Pink Goldfish 2.0. Snowbird is a ski resort in Utah. And their recent ad campaign was to simply take their 1-star reviews and without explanation, just turn them into advertisements. So they just put up 5 stars and only one of them is filled in. And they put up a picture of, one of their ski slopes. And then they just put this person's scathing review up there. And the message is really clear. This person is unhappy with what they got from Snowbird in Utah, and we don't care. We're unapologetic. We're unashamed. What they wanted is not what we provide. And they very clearly recognize that in repelling those kind of people, basically this person was complaining there are no easy runs and it was way too challenging and way too difficult. So Snowbird's pushing away the people who want it to be easy, and they're attracting the people who want it to be outrageously challenging, all by simply flaunting, parading without shame, the very thing that you'd think you'd be trying to hide. No, we need 5-star reviews. We need to get them to take that down. We need to offer them a gift card. We need to find a way to get Amazon or Yelp or whoever it is to take that one down. We need to fight those people in court. We need to, if we don't have a 4.5 or plus, we're not going to make it. One of our favorites is Bado Bistro in Richmond, California. The guy was getting crushed by Yelp and he thought Yelp was taking advantage of him. So he gave people 25% off for 1-star reviews. And his goal was to become the lowest rated restaurant on all of Yelp nationwide. And he achieved it. He sold more pizzas in one day than he normally would sell in a month. And he did all sorts of things that we talk about. He has a big sign that says Costco's just down the street. They have bigger pizzas for cheaper. Their pizzas have more cheese and they sell ranch with them. If that's what you want, it's one more exit down. Go for it. That's probably what you need. He literally just pushes them away. He's unapologetic. He has a big chalkboard of all the things he doesn't offer. No extra olive oil, no free napkins, no table service. He's just unapologetic about who he is. Now he's the 1-star chef. It's his new business. So even his whole branding around his business is how he's terrible and the worst, and you probably won't like it. And so we're just showing people that, going to what you said at the very beginning, authenticity, being who you are, not trying to, I didn't build the freak factor for an audience. I didn't say, what I think people want to buy is the freak factor. That's not what I said. I said, this is who I am. This has changed my life and I want to share it. Maybe it'll turn into something, maybe it won't. This guy's providing authentic Italian pizza in a way that he finds meaningful. And a lot of other people do as well, but a lot of other people find to just be frustrating and to be garbage and they don't like the experience. And so he's built a whole business around and had tremendous success around just simply flaunting who he was. And so we just have example after example of businesses who don't follow those industry practices. They don't follow the benchmarks. They don't go the same way. Because when everybody agrees that this is the direction to go and these are the standards of excellence, then every company ends up exactly the same. Every company ends up looking the same and sounding the same and acting the same. And so Pink Goldfish, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's such a great message where you've taken the idea of weirdness and being, different and just said, hey, listen, I think that's what they call differentiation. Now you've put together an assessment, and this is going to be my little tease, which is if you'd like to find out more, I took the assessment, and David will tell everybody how much of a freak I am on the Zoom after show, but you can actually go to Dr. End All. I love that. I just said Drendall. You can go to drendall.com and actually take the deviant assessment. It's quite brilliant the way that David does it. And but we're going to actually go to the Zoom after show, and in the Zoom after show, I'll share my assessment. All you got to do is go to bit.ly/Corona TV after show. We're gonna end off with Harry Cohen is here, wonderful, wonderful guest from last week, I think, or was it the week before? I don't know, but Harry was one of just be the sun, not the salt. He said David is wonderful. Yes, he is. Judy says Snowbird is epic skiing. But what I want to do as well is let's give Lee Durst the final word. She said, I said, freak is a term of endearment in our family. Loving this, Joseph Jaffe. But there are two final things to do. One of them is our segment where I give you a quote, and you have to tell me who said this. The epitome of great freaks out there. So your quote is, I'm not going to change the way I look or the way I feel to conform to anything. I've always been a freak.
I think we might use that in our book. I think it might be John Lennon. That's my guess. John Lennon.
You know what I say to you? Boom. How about that? Winner, chicken dinner. That was well done and well played. And then the final thing, I mean, there's the final thing. I keep saying the final thing, but seriously, the final thing is our Corona question, which almost seems like a, based on everything we've discussed. But what has been the most fundamental change, would you say, in your lifetime from a business standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it right now. It's just the internet. I mean, that wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Cell phones weren't even a thing. VCRs weren't even a thing. Microwaves weren't even a thing. And I don't think I would have been able to do the business that I do. I don't think people would have been able to find me as a keynote speaker. I wouldn't have been able to find you. People wouldn't be able to easily tell people about me. I wouldn't be able to easily share my videos. I wouldn't be able to connect with Tom Morris and connect with you. You wouldn't have social media. I have friends all over the world that I've met at conferences and events, and we maintain our relationships through social media, through the internet. I can stay in contact with my family from all over the world using video. I can run my business from a mobile phone instead of having to have an office and having complicated things that have to happen. I can organize my flights when I was allowed to leave my house on an app instead of having a complicated situation with papers and tickets and phone calls and being on hold and all those kinds of things. So I think the internet is hands down. People wouldn't be able to buy this shirt for me right now. I mean, all the things that we're able to do, and it's done print on demand and things like that, because people can access a site and find a thing that they want, and it can be produced for them. Instead of me having a physical store somewhere and saying, yeah, come on down. Next time you're in Goldsboro, North Carolina, stop by my shop and pick up a shirt, So I think the internet hands down is the biggest,
And I love the fact,
tying it back to what we've talked about, it enables people to find people who are freaks like them. It enables people to find people who are weird like them and be weird and not be alone. And I think that's really, really crucial.
Yes, exactly. And I love how you've gone back to the basics, to the beginnings, to see it for what it is, it was meant to be, and find that hope, positivity, and optimism. It has been a real treat. I would be remiss if I didn't thank on the air Mr. Tom Morris for making this introduction. It's all about paying it forward. Final word always, it doesn't actually go to you or to me. It goes to, the man who decides if you go to Dr. Rendall or Dr. Beginall, Mr. Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. I will be back tomorrow. Let's head on over to the Zoom after show. Thank you, David. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
I love it. I love seeing who's here. We've got some first timers, which is absolutely awesome, and some previous guests. I told you, Dr. Harry Cohen, this show is addictive. You're gonna find. I must say, hold on. I think there was Joey, and maybe there was Haiti as well. Go, guys, go. You know that this after show is all about you guys. I want to show you guys the freak factor deviant traits assessment. And this is actually, I did it very, very quickly. So in a very rushed way, we didn't get a chance to go through it. But what's really interesting about it is you go through and indicate what you believe are your strengths, and then rank them. And I don't know if I would have done them differently, but I kind of almost did them kind of from 1 to 52. And then you go down and you assign all your weaknesses, and do the same thing. And what I really, what I loved at the end is then you go and you kind of put them onto this grid. And David, why don't you tell what's so like magical about what happens when you put your strengths and weaknesses together? Judy, you're being so blunt and rude right now. Mm. I want. I want to say three things, and then we'll hand over to Lee. First point is Glenn, who's with us today, and he just put this in the comment thread, so I'll just mention it. He said, "My son has Asperger's, and at 26, his superpower is his intellect, and his kryptonite is his directness. I've encouraged him to be who he is, but this does create issues for him." The second point I wanted to make is Simon Cowell, the brand, the personal brand, the man has changed. Maybe it's because of some of his issues in his own personal life, but right now he's not the old Simon Cowell. So sometimes I think that journey in terms of being able to kind of determine whether it's strength, weakness, power, superpower, evil power, he's definitely now, you've seen that change and that evolution. And speaking of evolution, the third point that I just wanted to make is Haiti, kudos to her, because she, when she started, we would see her, it would be dark, the room would be dark, she'd be off camera. Now it looks like she's ready for her own streaming debut, I think, so, she's got the background going. So Haiti, you are evolving as well. We love it. And just keep on doing it, because it's great. So anyway, well, I want to go to Lee, who had a point, and then we'll go back to Harry. And by the way, in this after show, guys, I appreciate all the the manners and the graciousness. Just speak up, speak out. This is awesome, and I will figure out a way to make sure everybody has a voice today. So Lee.